All right, our correspondent giving us update. The Collation Center in Kogi will open any moment from now, but we'll continue with our conversation here in the studio. Professor Adeni, a lot has been said by Mr. Dazang and Mr. Okechukwu regarding the task before the present governor, going back to Imo State, before we delve to Kogi.
Yeah.
There's expectations, of course, when there's a new governance in place.
That's right. Huge expectation, no doubt, against the background of the many difficulties that we are facing, even at the national level. Question of limited finance, limited resources, which DG Okechukwu alluded to. It's been a problem, and of course, when you have a governor being re-elected, the expectations are even more. Because being re-elected simply means that he did some things that people consider salutary, and of course they're expecting him to enhance those things, or maybe to continue with those efforts, in the interest of the people's well-being. And what is democracy? Essential to democracy, it's people's well-being, the ability to fulfill their aspirations. Aspirations can also be multidimensional, but critical to it is security, a rest of mind, the thriving of economic activities, ability to predict things, opportunities, for your kids, your children, upcoming generation. And we also know that as a state governor, he may not be in the position to do all these things, because there are some things that are beyond his powers, but the kind of charisma, the kind of energy that he will inject into his own micro-environment, of course, can be very instructive in terms of the building of confidence, and the engendering of camaraderie amongst the people of his state. But again, maybe we should come back again to this question of declining resources. The resources are declining. It's very, very obvious. We know that. And we have also made the argument severally that there are different ways in which individual states, can be very ingenious, such that they can be very creative in generating income and not perpetually looking up to the center for the usual allocation. It's Imo State, we know what it is, one of the most educated states in the country. Recent records show that it had one of the highest number of professors, if we have to use that as a yardstick. And of course, business people are also thriving. There are different ways in which, these huge human resources and potentials can be harnessed, but it all depends on the creativity of the governor as well. I read in the papers 2-3 weeks ago how government at the center is thinking about expanding its revenue base. Yes, we've been hearing about this expansion thing, through moving away from oil, to solid minerals, to agriculture, to steel development. But of course, government is still thinking at the center, by involving expatriates that are in excess of 50,000, in the business of increasing revenue base. So if government is thinking at the center, to increase revenue base away from oil, which has become a traditional, source of income. The challenge is also on the state to be much more ingenious, so that we can help the system, as the case could be, because the economics of borrowing is one that is jaded, one that is unhelpful, one that it's, that portends a bleak future for the country, because we have seen in the past how countries that resorted to borrowing to survive, have found themselves between the rock and the hard place. And it's that position that we should begin to retrace our step from. And one way to retrace our step from it, is by looking for new ways to generate income. And not just looking for new ways like government is doing through trying to do through expatriates, through involving expatriates. But of course, blocking leakages as well, enhancing transparency, encouraging accountability. And again, these things shouldn't just be things that we're going to be mouthing, but it should be things, that we should see government agencies and officials in government, working directly to us. So that if we see action, if the populace is seeing action, the citizens are seeing action, then they can begin to think that, or imagine, or even see it, that democracy is yielding some tangible results away from the intangibles that they are presently reaping from it now. The intangibles are the sense of involvement that they are enjoying, the fact that they can vote, gives them that sense, boost their self-esteem to to some extent, makes them feel that, yes, we are actually citizens of this country. We are determining who's going to lead us for another 4 years. But beyond that psychological satisfaction, it's also the need for us to have the physical element. And that physical element will come through the provision of basic needs of life, such that they can trust their system and not be externalizing it, like we are seeing in recent times.
Professor Adeni, you've just nailed it for us, because leadership, of course, comes with a lot of responsibility. And Mr. Dazang, if we want to breach that margin that Professor Adeni has, raised concerns about, it has to do with looking inward. It has to do with, regaining the confidence of the people to believe in the governance in place, and also bridging the gap by providing the necessary amenities that is required.
Yes, let me say that when I was at UNN in the early 80s, what I observed was that every 3 students from the East was from Imo State. 3 in every 4 of the Igbo-speaking students were from Imo. Then there was only Imo and Anambra. And for a long time, I think Imo used to have the largest number of students that sat for JAM or WAEC. I stand to be corrected. And so you have a state that is highly educated. At that time, they used to give short shrift to enterprise. It was left to the Anambra people then. But by and by, you could see that they have embraced enterprise. And the job I used to do exposed me a lot to the fact that you go into the hinterlands. And one thing I saw up to like 2-3 years that I was in Imo and I visited a number of local governments was that you could see mansions in the bush. You just see mansions, even where there are no roads. You see, so you could see the extent to which people invest. And also, like I was saying that at a point, if you visited Imo, after every 6 months, you see one gigantic hotel. And they were even running out of names to christen the hotels. And Imo now became a destination for tourists, for people who held workshops and conferences. Most of the workshops we used to hold in the East were either in Owerri or in Calabar because of the peaceful and serene ambience of these cities. And these are things that the governor can leverage. He can leverage on the enterprise of the people. In fact, I discovered that people from Anambra, present Anambra, were coming to build hotels in Owerri. So he can leverage on that and provide an enabling opportunity for people to invest in his state and give jobs. I was at one of the hotels called Oxygen. And that's why I told you that they were running out of names. And the interesting thing was I came across staff working in the hotel from Abia, from different states. So, the place now became like a miniature representation of the Southeast. People found it a haven for employment. They were comfortable. So these are the things, as a governor, you leverage on, and then you make your people prosper. But these things are also precedent. They are predicated on peace. If the place is not peaceful, then there are issues. Because I was saying that I watched a video that was made by one of the bishops in Imo State. And the bishop was lamenting the extent to which villages, people's houses were razed down, and villages were evacuated, people deserted the villages. It's not a good statement. And these are the things that he has to address. He has to assure everyone, every citizen of his security. And he has to be seen not only to be assuring, but to be doing it so that the glory of Imo State will return to it, and the people will give him the kind of robust support that he needs to pilot the affairs of that state. I have many good friends from Imo State, and one of my benefactors, Chief Emmanuel Iwanya, was a senior editorial board member of the Champion newspapers, and he was also my senior in the university. We went to the same university. So these are people who have tremendous goodwill, and he can work in concert with them and other people close to them to develop the state. And I recall that even before now, a lot of people, a lot of his predecessors, came under the wing of some of these formidable personalities, and they were able to leverage their goodwill and develop the state. So we hope to see that kind of thing in Imo. He should restore its glory. He should restore peaceful coexistence, and it should make Imo a tourist destination. Some 5-6 years ago, if you went to Imo by this time, you were looking for a hotel room. You wouldn't get it because someone from abroad had booked it for like 3 months in advance. People, they book for these rooms in anticipation of the Christmas season. And when people bring in dollars from abroad,
Mr. Dazang, we have to go to Lokoja. Our correspondent informed us earlier that the collation center will open any moment. So we're getting that information right now. Let's cross over. Let's see what's happening at Lokoja, please. The collation of results to commence. Mr. Okechukwu, earlier when before you joined us, we were just sharing thoughts with Mr. Dazang on, I'm sure you're aware of the 9 words under the Ogori Magongo local government area that were cancelled by INEC following the whole discrepancies that was observed and following investigations going on. So we want to believe that this collation of results, which we're hoping, based on what Mr. Dazang has shared, we're hoping that it doesn't affect, the cancellation of those 9 words does not affect what will play out here today. I don't know if you want to react to that before we cross over very quickly.
For Kogi State, I was highly appalled myself because I thought we could have learned lessons from what happened in 2019, that the incumbent governor and the people of good people of Kogi State could have learned their lessons. I understand it's not only in Ogori Magongo, that there are other local governments that suffer the same fate, like Okehi, Adavi, Okene, and some others. So if, as your correspondent said, there's this issue of substantial average, that if the number that is stepped down is more than or substantial enough, then they might end wherever the collation will end. But let's see what happens and what INEC did. But what pained me most importantly is the fact that INEC officials were the ones that the fingers are allegedly pointing to. It's very painful, because if you decided to work in INEC, you should know that you are like a referee of a football match. Yeah. And a very intense football match where some people place their bets for draws, some place for winners, and different colors. So if you take up an appointment like in INEC, you should also, for God's sake, no matter your religion, the Holy Quran and the Holy Bible, they all have enough admonitions for piety. These are jobs that concerns us, because it's been proven on and on again that democratic states have developed more than undemocratic states. That if you adopt the principles of democracy, the values of democracy, free and fair election, rule of law, accountability, that the tendencies that the society will prosper.
Yeah.
No matter whatever amount you are paid, if we do not develop, you will see us not having doctors in our hospitals. They will migrate. Or jackpot. We should ask ourselves, why are our people living? So the little job we are doing might help us to have our people back home, or our youths to stay here. Nigeria spent over 300 billion trying to perfect the electoral system. And somebody somewhere trying to undermine that effort. Why did we have a lot of turnout in 2023 general elections? It's because the people's hope was elevated, that there will be free and fair election. And then you're an official of INEC with all the allowances as stipends. And you go from a place and you start writing results before the election. One, you are in the corridor of what we call Mpo. Mpo, an Igbo word, was borrowed by English language as a living language and called impunity, where you just assume that other agents are idiots, that they will not ask of the result sheet. A night before that election, I saw distinguished Senator Dino Melaya, one of the candidates, pointing out that some results have been written. In spite of that warning, you still thought he would pass through the haystack. So it's very painful. But let's see why the coalition goes ahead, whether it will be only Ogori Magongo or whether Okehi Adavi and others. And what impressed me in Kogi State, to be honest, is the candidate of the Social Democratic Party, Murtala Ajaka. When he said he was leaving us in a APC to go to a SDP, an unknown party, I said, okay, that's the sweet of democracy. Go and run around. When you come back, I didn't know he would become one of the serious candidates. So for whatever it is, that's also the jude of democracy. And anybody who is trying to subvert democracy, the good luck in Kogi is that so far, the number of deaths recorded, I don't think is up to what was recorded in 2019. If we call that an improvement, we thank the good people of Kogi State, we thank the incumbent governor. But as long as we keep on doing do-or-die politics, I will make state elections or government offices are the best business option. We'll continue to have do-or-die politics.
Of course.
So we must open our base so that the private sector will thrive. I was in South Korea, and I was asking one of my friends that brought me to South Korea. He introduced me to one of his sons. He said he's about to graduate. I said, oh boy, where are you going when you graduate? He said he's going to Samsung. I said, but their father is an official of the government. Why don't you go there? He said, no. That the civil service is not attractive in South Korea. That those even small fintech companies are more attractive to them. They use more than civil service. And I felt so happy. I said, can you imagine? So in this place, they can't do a do-or-die election because there are options. So we must open the options. We must develop our country. If we don't develop it, only the president cannot do it, only governor cannot do it. And when you want to leave office as a governor, please allow your people to choose whoever that they feel. I know people make mistake of voting wrong candidates. The British people voted Boris Johnson. But they dropped him when they see he wasn't doing well. They voted Trump and even want to vote him again. That's democracy. We need to help ourselves by, we are doing 3 state elections. And all the security apparatus of the country were mobilized. Both the army, the police, and what have you, civil defense, road safety. I don't think it's a good news on our side. It also depletes our resources. It makes us look as if we are insecure, and which we are. So, but who can help us? Nobody will help us.
Okay, Mr. Okechukwu, we can hear the national anthem playing, so they're about to start.